Good afternoon, everybody. Let me just move this into presentation mode. And I'm Donald McCalman. I'm the Programme Director of Circularity Scotland, and I'm joined by Tristan Turnbull, who is the Commercial and Legal Director, and we'll take you through a few specific points which we think are important and relevant to where the hospitality sector is just now. These are the points we're going to cover. I won't spend too long on them because we'll get to the detail of it. As Leon said, we'll leave the questions until I think everybody has presented. Let me just make some opening remarks first, and perhaps unashamedly, increasingly you'll see us getting very, very focused on the fact that we have now less than 11 months to go. We're gearing up our team, we're gearing up our programme. We are completely convinced the 16th of August is not going to change. And therefore, the mindset entirely now that we're holding is we're going to go live on the 16th of August. And we will work with everybody to make sure that that happens. So that is increasing our singular focus as we move forward. It doesn't make it any easier when there are still some moving parts, let's be entirely honest. There are some elements, let's say, associated with VAT, for example, where those detailed designs are not concluded. We understand that it affects us, we know it affects you as well. We're having to work on the basis of we're going to keep going forward, but we need to make some assumptions. My urging as far as we possibly can is to start adopting that mentality. If we all wait for perfect detailed requirements, then we're not going to hit the 16th of August. And absolutely we understand that DRS is not the only change impacting this sector. We recognise that there's not much we can do about some of the other things that you're having to deal with, but our commitment is to work with you to find a way through it that still gets us to the 16th of August and all of us meeting our obligations. So I want to cover off where we've got to in recent areas, recent weeks and months of relevance to the sector and highlight some of the outstanding issues. Tristan is going to talk about some very specific elements associated with the RPO agreement and the timeline. I think most of you should know that probably a couple of months now ago, we published the return point handling fee. The legislation requires us to have a specific fee associated with closed loop hospitality. I think a large part of you are probably within that category, presented and laid out calculation process for that. And I think as far as we're concerned, and we're moving on. I think everybody should know that. If you aren't aware of it, please have a look at our website. The other main area that we've been focusing on very much, CAF's team at SEPA, is to try and seek resolution as to how producers in particular can ensure compliance with the regulations when they are continuing to use UK SKUs. It is a producer challenge, but the reason I'm introducing it here is to make you aware that as sellers of goods, this work is happening, and I know it's a concern for some organisations. Perhaps a lot in the retail sector, but I would imagine also in the hospitality sector that there will be a mix of different types of products coming through. The fundamental thing that everybody has to comply with is the rules associated with a scheme article. And without getting too technical, many producers will have scheme articles which are dedicated to Scotland. Some, for reasons of scale and so on, keep using the same product that they sell across the UK. It's a producer challenge to make sure the risks associated with that are minimised to acceptable levels. But we recognise in the work that we've done with producers in SEPA, there are implications on those who sell the end product to consumers. The upshot of all this work is within the next couple of weeks, we hope to have an agreed sequence of risk assessment and mitigation activities. And some of that will mean, therefore, that there's greater ability for you as retailers and hospitality providers to be more confident that you are absolutely compliant with the regulations with the help of producers.
Donald, sorry, it's Leon. Can I just interrupt for a moment? I think there's a few people on the call saying that they can't see your slides. They can only see the intro slide. Hasn't moved on. The presentation hasn't moved on the screen.
That's interesting because it's moving on my screen. I think in that case, what we'll do is we'll go back to version 1. Can anyone see slide 4 now?
Yeah, I can see that. That's good. Thanks.
Okay, fine, we'll stay with that. There's a little bit of extra real estate on the screen, but hopefully it's not going to complicate things too much. Tristan will cover off recent work we've done on the producer fee.
Thanks, Donald. Yes, our last focus over the recent months, we've been working with producers, bearing in mind the registration portal on the 1st of December. We were asked to come up with a producer fee, which, if you remember, is about payment, which producers will make to CSL, and that's really the difference between our revenue and our expenditure in each year. We carried out a series of roadshows back in the middle of August, where we showcased the producer fee to producers who registered for that. We have come up with a blended fee of 3.84 pence as a producer fee. That varies depending on the type of scheme material, from PET, metal and glass. The challenge for us was to come up with a fee 1 year before go live, which we've achieved. Obviously, things can change in those 12 months, and we consistently have that under review, and we're always looking at ways in which we can reduce that fee and that burden on producers and on the scheme. I mentioned that producer registration is due to commence on the 1st of December. We recently held a technical workshop with producers who registered to go through the technical detail around registration in terms of data to be provided, corporate data, business data, product data, bank data, and all the sort of stuff we need to be able to ultimately effect for a producer to register with us, and that will then allow us to register that producer with SEPA. That window, as I said, will start on the 1st of December, and it will run through to the end of February in terms of the regulations. When producers register, they also have to sign what's called PE and producer agreement, and that really sets out the terms on which a producer is appointing CSL as their scheme administrator. Also sets out the obligations of CSL in terms of delivery as the administrator. So we have now committed to going public with the producer agreement and our terms and conditions by the middle of October. The last couple of months I've been working with the internal teams here to try and pull that together. And I think we're still on track to be able to deliver that to producers and the way that we're able to next month. As I say, once we've done that, the focus will then be on continuing to get registration portal ready for producers to start registration on the 1st of December.
Great, thanks, Tristan. And the reason we cover that off in a bit more detail, I know some of you might be producers, but you all work with producers, but also the process that we're going through with producers is in many ways not dissimilar to what we were going through with the return point operators, many of whom obviously sit within the hospitality sector. And Tristan's going to come back and cover off a bit more about the sort of proposals we are shaping up for the RPO agreement just in the next slide after this. That's main focus areas for us for the last wee while. Just thought I'd drop in a couple of very specific areas relevant to, I think, the hospitality sector in particular. For reasons of time and indeed complexity, I'm not going to go into the full detail of this, but please contact us separately if you'd like more information. VAT has been sitting there as a challenge for some time. I see some pleasure slides there. And I know Howard from our team has been working quite closely with many people across the sector, particularly in the hospitality side of things, to work with yourselves and with Treasury and HMRC to develop the detailed rules. We can only go so far before HMRC and Treasury say, right, over to us. That's exactly where they are just now. They are aware of some of the challenges, particularly in the closed loop return points, with regard to how VAT is treated on the way in and on the way out. And everybody, including the minister responsible for DRS in Scotland, has been very focused on this, including writing to equivalents in the Westminster government. We can't really say an awful lot more than that. We have been assured they're aware of the need to move fast, and we hope that there will be some greater level of detail that will allow business planning, even system planning, to take place in the relatively near future. Another big area which we've been spending some time on, and also working closely with BIFA on this,
is recognising one of the challenges that the hospitality sector, the parts of the hospitality sector face when it comes to dealing with glass. Our obligation is to turn up to each of the return points and take away return containers, whether you're a closed loop establishment or a standard return point. And we know that for many pubs and clubs, with the volume of glass collected and the pace of selling bottled beers and so on a Saturday night, managing the flow of containers out in such a way that allows us to manage our count processes is quite challenging. So we are looking at a number of different ways where we can streamline that approach. Potentially, for example, looking at using, let's say, a large wheelie bin or skip for collecting it in bulk, but reconciling that against some statement, let's say some form of EPOS statement that says within this skip or wheelie bin, we know there are 516 bottles of this type and 416 bottles of that type. We're also looking at a couple of other options in terms of bar top scanners and counters that again allows us to have an accurate count of what we've been taking away from each establishment, but also facilitating the collection and storage of that in the establishment. So a lot of effort on that. Carl, I'm sure can cover one or two more points of that in more detail when we get to the BIFLA presentation. And then the final point, probably should have put trading standards as opposed to price mark packs. I think price mark packs may be more of an issue for some convenience sectors, but again, perhaps some of your members, people on this call, are aware of that. But there's also shelf edge labelling, and it indeed touches on other aspects. Trading standards legislation is a reserved matter. Deposit return scheme is obviously a Scottish legislation, and there are one or two touch points, shall we say, which are being looked at in some detail, particularly particular focus of the Scottish Government team at the moment to try and resolve that as quickly as possible. So I touched on the fact that there are still some moving parts and some assumptions that need to be made. These are some of those areas. We are with colleagues in Scottish Government, SEPA, and indeed wider than that, pushing hard to have them all resolved. They affect us in many ways. I know they affect you. And as far as we possibly can, we're trying to push forward in our planning, recognising there are still some assumptions that we have to make until these are resolved. Okay, I'm going to ask Tristan to cover off the whole registration contracting process with return point operators.
Thanks, Tom. What we really appreciate and like you to do is, if you haven't done already, is go to our website, circularityscotland.com, and register there, and that will give you access to briefings around the scheme, some news around the scheme, briefings about what we're doing, and any events that we're going to hold. I think if you're new to the DRS journey, I think that's really the starting point. Go to the website, register, and we'll be in contact with you. I mentioned the producer agreement a couple of slides ago. Similar to that, we're currently in the process of developing a contract called an RPO agreement, which will really govern the operational and the financial interactions and the commercial interactions between us as scheme administrator and each of you. The structure of that, I think, will be similar to the producer agreement, which is really three parts. There's part one around your corporate details, business details, who you are, who we are, and then there'll be a main body of the agreement which will contain most of the legal terms and conditions. There will be some terms around health and safety, being able to assess your premises, how we make sure that our employees are safe when they do collections. There will be some clauses around financial transactions. We are required to pay a reasonable handling fee to you for carrying out our collections at your premises. And there'll also be a series of part B of the agreement will be a series of schedules, which will go into more detail on some of the issues that operationally will impact the day-to-day of our relationship with you. So, for example, a collection schedule, how and when you collect, how you prepare the materials for collection, and also where you have an RVM machine in your premises, some of the standards around that, the branding around that, and what that does. I think there's more to follow on that, more to come on that. We are still shaping the document at the moment. And in terms of the timeline, the actual agreement, I would anticipate that being ready and available sometime early in 2023. I'm currently working on that at the moment to pull that together. and that will align to the capability and ability of RPOs and retail hospitality to register on our website as an RPO. But as I said at the start of the slide, please register on the website now, because you get access to a whole host of stuff in there, which really help, I think, in terms of understanding the scheme and the journey to registration. So this slide is an indicative timeline of where we are at the moment, and all the way through to go live next year. I talked about a registration workshop for producers which we held back in August. You can see that on the left there. So the current focus at the moment is really twofold. We are trying to finalise the producer agreement contract, get that into play publicly, and focus on signing up producers for registration starting in December. Alongside that, as I say, we're finalising the RPO agreement. Hopefully by the end of 2023, we'll have done that. And then in March 2023, we will open RPO registration to allow you to register on our scheme on our website, as I said. And around about that time, we will start to look to build a consumer marketing campaign around the scheme, around about returning your material to retailers. And internally behind that, what we're doing is obviously working with BIFA and their IT partner to develop a full IT system. We believe that will be completed around May. And prior to that, with BIFA, we'll have the accounting and the bulking centres tested and up and running at the end of March next year. Prior to go live, we plan to, we plan to introduce some scheme testing and pan scheme testing of materials to make sure we don't sort of fall foul of any unusual type of product when we go live. I think that actually covers anything you want to add at the timeline, Donald?
No, that's fair. It's a high-level view, and we keep iterating that, obviously, as we move through the schedule. There's a lot to do, but we're very focused on getting to that 16th of August deadline. Final slide from us, and really just trying to highlight some key things that, if you haven't already started to do, absolutely appreciate and recognise lots of organisations are already starting to get into this. I appreciate there's a lot on, and even if you can start doing some of this, it's going to help prepare your organisation for what's coming up. No shame, we're going to keep bashing the message. Please sign up to our website. It's a great way of getting initial contact and getting information. Get familiar with the new obligations. I think Kat's presentation later will help a lot with that. There's a lot of detail in there. Even just start thinking about this as a project. If there's somebody in your team or your organisation, and it may just be part of their job, to start giving a focus to this, it pays huge dividends. I think there are probably quite a few people on the call who are distance sellers, who sell their products straight to consumers, and there are obviously parts of the legislation associated with that. So you need to start thinking about how you're going to deal with that take-back service. Leon did not tell me to put this line in, but trade associations have a huge role to play, and we have a great relationship with trade associations, so please stay in touch. We feed as much as we can through Leon and obviously directly on our website as well. And there's some tactical things to start thinking about, even now, how will this work on the 16th of August? Where are you going to put stuff? How much are you selling? Do you need to start thinking about how much space you need to start putting in place, and so on? Some of you may need to think about how we're going to start dealing with VAT changes to the systems. And over the next few months in particular, we will be increasing the number of calls and briefings, and just please keep an eye out for that. I want to say that on the last slide, it will be part of the recording and circulation. There's some contact points there for ourselves, for SEPA, and some pointers to the regulations. Leon, that's us, and we'll hand back to you.
That is brilliant. Thank you very much, Donald and Tristan. That was a good run through of where things are at the moment. Thank you for your time on that. We'll move on now to hear from Carla Bryan, Senior Commercial Manager at BIFA, the logistics partner, who will be able to kind of outline where things are at from that very practical side of things. Over to you, Carla. Thanks.
Thanks, Leon. Are my slides shared on screen? Can you see them? Perfect. Yeah, thank you. So yeah, just to follow up from Donald's presentation, just wanted to take the opportunity to take you through where we are from the operational delivery perspective and what we're planning as a result of our status within the scheme. Slide, sorry. Just wanted to give you some high-level operational numbers that we're working with today as our role within the scheme. So we're anticipating that there is around 500 jobs created as a result of our ongoing construction and then operational delivery of the scheme that will be created within Scotland. We will be operating 4 collection systems, 3 of which are contracted with Circularity Scotland, one of which we are also looking at commercially to support online take-back obligations. So we've been contacted by some of our existing commercial customers to whether we can support and fulfill some obligations on their behalf. So that's the 4th collection system that we'll be operating. And I'll talk you through how we've configured the different collection systems to meet the needs of lots of RPOs that will be operating throughout Scotland. There will be 12 new operational sites created as a result of our ongoing delivery, and I'll talk you through where we are with our plans on those currently. We are anticipating, and I would caveat the next 2 numbers, around 27,500 collection points and around 10,000 daily collections. That's what we're planning. However, we won't actually know in terms of collection sites and what the ongoing daily collections look like until the RPO registration has been completed. So that's what we're currently planning for, but ultimately those numbers are subject to change based on RPO registration. And we anticipate there's around 3 billion containers as a result of drinks containers in Scotland, and that's what we're planning from a delivery perspective to deal with as a result of the scheme. Now, consumer behaviour is a big piece with the deposit return scheme. We don't actually know where these materials, where these drinks containers are effectively going to be returned at this moment in time. So effectively, we are planning a very flexible and ongoing management of DRS. We don't see the operational delivery at go live. We see it changing effectively over kind of 6 to 12 months as we see these materials and the return points and deal with, I suppose, deal to support effectively the flux in a lot of containers that will be deposited at certain return point operators. So that's a really high level in terms of the operational overview as part of the scheme. The 3 collection systems, again, this is a draft operating model. We've talked about your obligations, potentially a lot of you looking at closed loop hospitality, and as Donald touched on, how we deal with glass in bulk collections. But what we did from the outset is look at our existing customer base. We work with many sectors across our current industrial and commercial business, looked at the impacts for DRS and how it might work operationally on site. So we've put these systems together, will be depending on how RPOs are operating, with the exception of glass, clearly, that potentially given some of the pubs and restaurants dealing in such high volumes of glass, there is the option for glass in bulk in bins, but also glass in totes. So we've developed an operating system that allows us to be very flexible to meet everybody's needs. Effectively, everything that the plastic in cans collected in sacks and the glass in totes, which is an exchange service, can be done on the same vehicle to allow for flexibility of where return point operators are geographically within Scotland and how many are in a given area. Equally, reverse vending machine collections, glass in bins, and also for bulk collections for closed loop hospitality can be done on the same vehicle. So allowing that flexibility across return point operators. We're fully aware that storage is a concern. After talking to many return point operators, we have fed into that registration process as Donald and Tristan went through, made sure that we factored in access restrictions, limitations with storage. We're also doing ongoing trials at the moment. Now that the bag sizes have been confirmed by Circularity Scotland, we'll be doing trials to make sure, as RPOs, you know how many bottles and cans fit in each of the sacks. And also we've already done trials for the glass in totes, and have also done some trials around closed loop hospitality glass in bins. And we are working with current reverse vending machine providers around glass in bins. So it is a flexible model, and we anticipate, as I say, the kind of selection of how closed loop hospitality want to manage glass on site. Where are we with our operational plans for go live for the 16th of August? You'll be pleased to know that we're on track. Priority for us was the counting centres, to get them secured. And as Tristan said, in terms of the roadmap, making sure that we're ready for testing at the beginning of March. The counting centres are all confirmed. So they'll be kind of Eurocentral, Grangemouth and Aberdeen area. And then next priority for us was to look at the bulking centres. Again, we've been having multiple conversations with local authorities about shared land, talking to SEPA about our permits that we need, and pleased to announce that 6 of the 8 bulking centres are currently secure, with 2 on ongoing negotiations. There'll be a range of operations run from these locations in Scotland. They will include transport operations, baling, bulking, tote washing, and any potential workshops that we'll need to support the vehicle network. I would state at this moment in time, we're also under commercial negotiations. We are very keen to utilise existing infrastructure already with capacity in Scotland. So there is ongoing discussions with a variety of businesses around how they can support the scheme to reduce the CO2 and the mileage impact as a result of the deposit return scheme. So we're well on our way from an operational delivery perspective to be ready for go live on the 16th of August. That's it from me. I'll hand back to you, Leon.
That's great. Thank you very much, Carla. Some really good detail in there, sort of setting out some of the practicalities there, which I know have been and possibly still continue to be an issue for a lot of our members in the wider sector. And great to know that you're trialing things as well. And we'll maybe come back to some of that in the Q&A afterwards. Okay, so we'll move on to our final set of presenters. We have Kath McDowell, Unit Manager on Deposit Return Scheme at SEPA, and also Jack Taylor, Specialist Officer at SEPA as well. I'll hand over to you now. Thank you.
Hello there. So yes, can you hear me? Just checking. Can you hear me?
Yeah, all good.
Oh, excellent. So I'm Kath McDowell. So I'm the unit manager of what will be the regulatory team for SEPA, who will be overseeing compliance with the deposit return scheme. I'm joined today by Jack Taylor, who's one of our technical specialists. I'm going to give you a whistle-stop tour of what deposit return scheme is. So from the 16th of August 2023, everyone will pay a 20p deposit when they buy a drink in a single-use container. The containers that are included in the deposit return are PET plastic bottles, so that's most fizzy juice drinks and water bottles, your steel and aluminium cans, your glass bottles, all between 50 millilitres and 3 litres in size. So most retail outlets will also operate a return point, but there is an exemption option from return points. And hospitality businesses that sell drinks for consumption off-site the premises of sale, well, i.e. drinks to take away, are also considered to be retailers for the purposes of deposit return scheme. So why do we have a deposit return scheme? What are the main policy achievements that they're trying to do? So it's part of the Scottish Government's response to the global climate emergency. So creating a more circular economy where products and materials are kept in a high value state for use as long as possible. So the idea is to collect it up in a much better way so it can be recycled for a higher quality. It's also aimed to prevent littering, which can cost quite a lot of money to the Scottish economy every year. It's a producer responsibility scheme. So it's owned and operated by the industry with the drinks producers, but we're the regulatory overseer. So from 2024, there will be collection targets, not for the first year, but from 2024 onwards, there's a collection target for the number of returned containers of 80% for 2024 and 90% of containers in 2025 onwards. So what you're actually going to see in shops, including online. So you should see signs. You should see signs everywhere. Drinks or scheme articles are displayed for sale, telling customers that the deposit is 20 pence and how the deposit can be redeemed. So at the tills or thereabouts, the deposit will be charged for each scheme article sold, and informed that if there is no deposit due, so if it's a scheme article that's out of scope, say it was on the shelves before go live, the customers will be told that this is not a scheme article and the deposit will not be returned. Each retailer that sells drinks should operate a return point unless they hold an exemption. Exemptions can be applied for from Zero Waste Scotland. Or unless they are only sold by a vending machine. And their return points can be operated manually or by a reverse vending machine as well. So for hospitality settings, what can you see? So this is obviously cafes, bars, restaurants, and the like. So there's no requirements for signage under hospitality settings. So you don't have the same as in shops. And you're not required to operate a return point if you only sell drinks for consumption on the premises. And all scheme packaging in that case will be kept and used by the establishment will be returned as CSL and BIFR have just explained. So the deposit, again, if you're only selling for consumption on the premises, you do not need to charge your customer the 20 pence deposit for the drinks consumed on site because you're retaining the container yourself. And you have to pay the 20 pence deposit to the supplier for each article you have purchased. So there's still an obligation to ensure that all the scheme articles that you are selling are from registered producers and they have a 20 pence deposit when you purchase them, but they'll be returned when they're collected. And you have to store empty containers securely for collection. So empty containers are a form of waste, so they need to be stored securely. So something else worthy of note is the drinks sealed at point of sale. So this is an additional requirement that was introduced in the amendment regulations in 2022. So if hospitality premises or other retailers, if you sell a drink in single-use packaging, but you've sealed that drink at the point of sale, such as a crowler, then you're considered to be a producer. And you also must register. So obviously you can register direct with SEPA or you can register through DRS Scotland. So if you do this, you will have the producer's responsibilities as well as a hospitality responsibility. So you need to register. You need to charge the 20% deposit on everything that you sell. And you need to keep a note of that information and report it to SEPA or through DRS Scotland. You need to arrange for the collection of your empty scheme containers, and you need to meet your collection targets and refund deposits to consumers. So they're similar to other drinks manufacturers. So drinks that are sold in packaging that's designed to be refillable and reusable, such as milk in returnable bottles or beer in growlers, they're not within the scope of SEPA's deposit return scheme. So more information on what is and isn't in scope is available on SEPA's website. So if you are operating a return points, manual return point or vending machine return points, plastic and metal will be stored together, glass will be stored separately, and the retailers will retain the return packaging until uplifted. So again, like I say, there are exemptions for return points, and they can be done on either proximity or environmental health grounds. So looking at the location, the design, size of retail premises, if it doesn't permit you to operate one, you can look at elsewhere other companies that will operate it for you. Or issues such as food safety, health and safety, fire safety, and other such things. So the exemption process is run by Zero Waste Scotland, and more information is available on their website. Last thing from me is just some important dates to look forward to. So from the 1st of January, SEPA's registration window opens. So if you're directly registering with SEPA, you can do so via our website from that date onwards. Otherwise, obviously, if you're working with a scheme administrator, that they will register you on your behalf. As of 16th of August, that's when the scheme goes live. So from that date on, all drinks produced after this date are scheme articles, and you'll start seeing the deposit-bearing stock on the shelves. 31st of December 2024, then the first target date comes into place, where 80% of packaging placed in the market must be collected. And then obviously, after the year after that is when the higher collection rate stays into place. I think that's the end of the presentation, so I'll just stop sharing and pass you back.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much, Kath. Okay, well, we've had a lot of information there from our sets of presenters there. I can see that some people have been putting questions into the Q&A already. Your microphones should be live now. If people do want to ask questions, you can also put your hand up, and I'll bring you in so that you can ask those questions directly. I'll try my best to sort of bring people in the correct order. I did notice that Robin Knapp had been posting, had posted 2 or 3 questions into the chat while the presentations were going on. Robin, do you want to come in and ask one or two of your questions just now?
Thanks, Leon. Thank you. Just a simple question to Kath. Your presentation was very helpful, Kath, very clear. You said in there that glass would be stored until uplifted by producers. Could you just explain? Could you explain what that means exactly?
Yes, so it's the producer obligation to collect the material. So this will be in practice done via Circularity Scotland of contracted BIFA. So in most instances, that will be done through, like I say, the Circularity Scotland's and BIFA's waste contractors. Some producers may choose to not register through the scheme administrator and register with us directly, and their obligation will therefore be to contact retailers and individually and arrange uplift in that manner. Obviously, we've no idea how many people will choose to register directly with SEPA and not join the scheme administrator at this time, but it is an option. But yeah, so BIFA are basically collecting on behalf of the producers.
Okay. Thank you. Something that came up at a previous presentation was that there's going to be a limit to the number of wine bottle shapes that are going to be allowed. Is that the case? And how will unauthorized bottle shapes be controlled? I'm particularly thinking here magnums and half bottles.
That's not a part of the regulations. So unless Donald's aware of anything as part of the producer agreement.
Well, Robin, let me try and find some response there. I don't know who said that comment earlier on, but just to be clear, there are, as far as we're concerned, absolutely no restrictions on shapes and sizes as long as they comply with the regulations, as Kath said. So if it's a miniature, all the way up to a 3-litre bottle of whatever, it's in scope. Producers declare it as a scheme article, and if it turns up at a collection point, then our job is to come and pick it up. There are absolutely some interesting shaped bottles out there. Everybody keeps talking about Matty Rosé, and some of the reverse vending machines might struggle to accept that, but the onus on the return point is to collect the container if it's brought back by a consumer. So in that circumstance, I would expect the consumer to go to the customer help desk and get the deposit back there, and then we'll sort out with BIFA how we pick up a few odd shaped bottles at the same time as obviously collecting the bulk from the back of the RBM. But there's absolutely no restriction on shape, size, or numbers. Size obviously is regulatory.
Okay, thank you, Donald. Leon, shall I carry on?
Well, let me bring some other people in.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah, thank you for your questions and contribution. Very much appreciated. I can't see any hands going up, so I'll continue to go through the chat function, the Q&A function at the moment. Keely Buckley, do you want to come in? You've posted two comments on the registration period.
Yeah, so I've just got a couple of concerns with regards to the length of the registration period. So it's a 5.5-month registration period right up until the very go live. My thoughts around that are, if we are needing to have visibility of return point operators, how will that apply if, in terms of exemptions if we don't have that visibility right up until the go live date? And then my second question on that is again around the go live date. If people are registering right at the very end, how will that affect the planning and scheduling from a BIFA collection point of view?
Thanks, Keely. It's Donald here. Let me go first, and maybe Carla might have a couple of points to throw into to the second point. The formal registration process is a sort of contracting process, and we're building the functionality just now to support first producers and then return point operators. But before that, we have a sign-up process, and right now you can go onto our website and sign up, and we would strongly encourage everybody to do that. We would like to get to almost the total number of return points by February, long before we start doing the formal registration and contracting process. And one of the reasons for that is absolutely to feed into BIFA. I'm sure Carla will say it, and she said it already to us, the sooner we can give BIFA a fairly comprehensive list of all the possible return points, then the sooner they can start planning and scheduling. And we're currently working on how we can accelerate that process, recognising everybody is flat out. In terms of the exemption side of things, the guidance that Zero Waste Scotland uses, and they have published it, so it's public domain, is certainly for proximity, you need to be reasonably close, say 300-400 metres. So you don't need to wait until there's a full list is available. You can look out the door and see, relatively close by, to whom would you send your customers with comfort and assuredness that it's a sensible thing for them. There's a various bits and pieces of work underway to try and look at how to maximise this. Zero Waste Scotland, as Kath has said, are responsible for managing that whole exemptions process. At some point, probably when we get to go live, I think there is an obligation to publish a list of all the return points that will be available, but we're not going to get to that full list before then. So I'm afraid for that first point, Keely, certainly if you want to start thinking of it right now, then you probably need to have a look around and just build your own assessment of, to whom would you want to send your customers to take back the containers if that's not something that you're wanting to do. Carla, I don't know if there's anything else you want to say about the scheduling side of things.
Yeah, I suppose just echoing your comments, Donald, really, from our perspective, we'd like everyone to register as soon as possible to allow us appropriate time to plan and route. What I would say is it's sat on our risk register, as you would expect it would be. We have appropriate contingency plan to allow us to deal with more reactive collections. So those that are registering right up until go live for when the scheme starts. So we are effectively planning for every eventuality, but would, recommend that everybody register as soon as you can.
Thank you.
Okay, that's great. Thank you for the answers there. Very helpful to the group today. A couple of other questions coming in on the chat there. I might just sort of pick this one out from Chris McGuinness. It's related to BIFA. Is it only going to be BIFA that will carry out the uplifts? And could I just add to that question as well? Because a number of members are asking what they should do with their other glass, metal and plastic items if drinks containers are now being handled separately.
So as I kind of alluded to, we are looking at utilisation of some parties that are already obviously existing capacity available in Scotland. They would effectively, if they were to look to undertake collections on our behalf, they would adhere to our contractual arrangements that we have with Circularity Scotland. I would point out at this stage, as you probably know, BIFA with the red vehicles and the trucks that we have on our road network today, and equally as many of you on the call being customers, it's a very different operation effectively that we will be running. It will be completely independent of our existing collections, and ultimately it will be scheme branded. So it's probably not what you're used to seeing when you see BIFA today. At the moment, I can't comment on the existing commercial arrangements that are still under negotiation, but in theory, the service will remain the same regardless of who you might see collecting. And in theory, it's not going to be a red vehicle that you see today. We are working through and are aware. You look at the existing collections that happen, particularly in the industrial and commercial collection space today. We're working with many of our customers around the segregation, the training needed to ensure that the deposit return scheme material goes into the deposit return scheme collection system. I'm aware there's ongoing discussions around how glass is managed from the outset. So if there's existing stock still coming through, but more broadly, they are the type of discussions that we're kind of working through with a lot of our existing customers and are happy to have with people that aren't existing Biffa customers as well. So if you do have another provider, we would be more than happy to kind of support and kind of share best practice of what we're working with existing people already.
Okay, that's great. Thanks very much, Carla. And I think that that's an important point, just that you businesses, business owners and operators really should keep in touch with Biffa and with Circularity Scotland and SEPA as well, just as the whole scheme develops as we move towards the start next summer. Okay, I've got a couple of hands in the chat now as well. Can I ask Peter Dornham to come in and ask the question, please?
Hi, Leon. I just want to clarify what I heard there. We're a sell on site, so no takeaway. We're obviously going to get charged for the glass and the products coming into the building. Where do we get the credit when it gets returned? Who returns that credit to us?
Peter, I'll answer that one for you. It's Donald here again. Yes, absolutely. When you go to your wholesalers or your distributors and you buy a scheme article, you'll pay the deposit at that point. You will, when you return the containers to us,
having collected it through Biffa's collection network, we'll then refund what you've brought back. Okay. I didn't explain that very well. Let me just make sure. Let me just return that to you to make sure I get that correct. So you provide a drink to a consumer, you don't charge the deposit, therefore you hold on to the container. So you bought that container from a wholesaler, you pay 20 pence for it. You hold on to it and we come and collect that from you, we count it and then we pay you back the deposit for that at that point. So we'll pay you once we've collected and counted the containers that we've uplifted from you, but using Biffa's services.
Do you have an aspirational time frame for that return of money out to us?
We are looking to do that fairly swiftly. There's a process we need to go through, which includes obviously the collecting, the bulking, the sorting, and then processing it through the numbers. We are aspiring to do that around 7 days, and we're going to firm that up once we've finished off the detailed modelling. We're trying to find the right balance between obviously recognising it's a cash flow issue for likes of yourselves, but we also need to make sure as an organisation we've got the cash to pay out. So we're balancing all those factors in there, but we're trying to make that as swift as we possibly can.
Okay, and I've got one other last question. Sorry for the detail. When it comes to say glass, do we need to be segregating it into clear, brown and green, or will it be mixed glass, and do they have to be whole or can they be crushed?
No need to colour separate them. Absolutely no problem with that. We'll do that downstream. If we can find a way of collecting glass in bulk, so when I touched on this earlier on in my presentation, if, for example, you can give us an EPOS receipt which says, see that wheelie bin there that's full of glass, there's the receipt which tells you what containers are in there, then that's great. We can take that away in one go. If there's no way of being able to break down individual, to be able to say to us what's in this particular skip or wheelie bin, then we'll need to take the containers away whole. And for that, we'll provide you with a tote box. It's a plastic box, which I think Cara will hold about 35 bottles or so. And that's what we'll use to uplift it from your site, keep the bottles whole. We then take that to accounting centre and do a detailed count, and then use that to credit you back both with your deposit and also with the handling fee.
Okay, that's great. Thanks very much, Peter. I'm conscious of time. We've got another couple of minutes, I think. John Harris, do you want to come in and ask your question?
Yeah. I've got a couple, but I'll start with the first one. You talked a lot about collection and storage here. I don't know how many restaurants you've been to in city centres recently, but you know, space is at a major premium, and finding somewhere to securely keep these bottles is not an easy thing to do. How do you propose these customers get around that challenge?
Yeah, so I'll take that one if that's okay, Leon. Yeah. So yeah, we're fully aware of space constraints, particularly in city centres. We currently operate in the large city centres in Scotland already, and we're fully aware with the hospitality customers that we operate today that space is a premium. What I would say, kind of referring back to my flexible fleet, we will be double shifting vehicles. Again, from our perspective, it's ensuring that we meet the needs of every return point operator. We'll be giving you as much information as we can around kind of bag sizes, storage space. We've ensured, if it is a tote collection as well, that the totes nest within one another so they don't take up much floor space and are fully stackable. As Donald alludes to, we've done trials on the totes already, so we'll be giving you information as to how much can be contained in sacks and totes. So we'll give you as much information as we can, and we'll want to understand what the space constraints are, equally access restrictions as well that are particularly in city centres. So we'll be collecting all that information at RPO registration and then using that to route efficiently. But we do have the capability to increase collections where we're double shifting, particularly in city centre areas.
Okay.
Okay, that's brilliant. So we've really just got another minute to go. So I think what I will do is I will just wrap up. First of all, I'd like to thank our presenters today. Thank you very much for making the time to present and to share your knowledge and insight with us today. Thank you very much to members as well for taking the time to join the webinar today. I think, as you've heard, there's still a lot of moving parts around DRS. So it's pretty vital that people do register for updates and do keep an eye on the Circularity Scotland website for more information. There's some really great FAQs on the SEPA website as well, so I would encourage people to take a look at those. I'm aware we do have a number of questions in the chat which we haven't quite got round to today, so we will come back to the group with answers to those questions. At UK Hospitality Scotland, we'll continue to keep members up to date with developments, and obviously if you do have any further questions after the session, please just either get in touch with my colleague Jack or come directly to me, and we'll come back with some responses to your questions. So I think as we're now at 2 o'clock, I'll just bring this to a close, and thanks again to presenters, and thanks very much for joining us on today's webinar. Thank you.